Hi, welcome back. A bit more of a serious subject. I've been asked by a few females if I would do a video specifically on, how not to be a victim. I've done one on street violence towards males and how males can avoid getting into those sort of confrontations. And I've been asked to do one that takes a more female perspective on matters. It's actually a subject very close to my heart. It was something that pained me a lot when I worked in security, that I would see tons and tons of these situations developing, and it was probably the thing that I went out of my way to try and deal with the most. I found it was probably the most important part of the security job, was trying to protect females from predatory males generally, sometimes predatory females. This can be a bit of a controversial subject because some of the stuff I'm going to talk about, I'm sure some will label as victim blaming. I'm not blaming any victims. I don't blame anyone for being a victim of a violent or sexual crime. That's definitely not their fault. But there are some things that we can do to prevent ourselves being the potential victim, or at least very much lower our chances, and you can say that's whatever you like. I'm basing my conversation in reality based on 23 years of seeing this stuff occurring, and I know from what I've seen there are certain behaviours and certain ways of looking that can encourage you to be singled out as a victim, and there are certain things you can do that discourage that. Now, in a perfect world, we could all walk around acting and dressing and looking however we wanted, in whatever place we wanted, and as long as we weren't breaking the law, no one should touch us. I completely agree. But it's not an ideal world. There are lots of very, very unpleasant people out there, and they will quite happily do some horrific stuff to you, and they will choose you for some very specific reasons. So I'm going to go into that today. If you feel strongly about victim blaming and you think this falls into that category, feel free not to watch. If you're interested in actually, in reality, how to keep yourself safer, please carry on. The first thing I would address is what really doesn't work. And what really doesn't work is doing one of these short-term self-defense courses. Those courses exist because the people running them want to make money. Unless it's some completely free course that someone's giving out, maybe that could be reasonable. But even so, there's usually a reason why people are doing that. And the fact of the matter is they rarely work, because most predators, if they're going to grab you in a violent manner, they're going to have the drop on you. They've already decided that you're going to be their victim, and they're going to get the first strike in. So if they've run up to you and they've punched you without you even seeing them, you knowing whatever martial arts isn't going to help you. The likelihood of someone approaching you from the front and saying, right, let's have a fight, that might happen in the movies, but that doesn't happen in real life. When really unpleasant people want to get hold of you, they will do so very quickly, very violently, and very unexpectedly. And you knowing, how to do a front kick or whatever probably isn't going to help. The other problem is that when you go to those classes, they tend to teach you, these techniques can work against anyone, against any man of any size. And a lot of the rehearsals that you're doing in those classes, they're almost like sort of dancing, that the victim in the class knows what way to roll. So when you throw him, he automatically throws himself onto the mat. It appears to be very effective. You can feel invincible. When you get out onto the street, things don't work like that. That 16 stone, very drunk, angry guy isn't going to throw himself onto the floor when a 7.5 stone girl grabs his wrist. In fact, he's going to violently punch her in the face multiple times until she's unconscious, and he will never fall on the floor. So it can give you a false sense of security that you've done one of these courses, you think that you can chuck everyone around, and then when you actually get to the street and you're walking around with this invincibility, you find out when it's too late that actually that stuff doesn't work. On the plus side of martial arts, I've known lots of people, male and female, that have done it for many years as a really great sport. They've become very good at it, and they don't try and do it in the street. They realise it's a sporting thing, But what it does give them, they exude confidence. It's given them a great level of self-confidence, and they're able to walk around with their head held high. They don't need to degrade themselves by getting horrendously drunk all the time, because they feel good about their lives. They've got something going on that's worthwhile, and that makes them less of a victim immediately. So you can definitely become less of a victim through martial arts, but I don't think that's going to be by doing a Bruce Lee thing on some guy in the street. That's going to be by your personal levels of confidence. Let's go through some of the things predators are going to look for in a potential victim, and some of the key things that I've seen people do that are kind of big green flags to a predator, that they're going to think that person is the one I'm going to pick on. So the first and foremost ones would be alcohol and drugs. If you're the person in the group that gets the absolute drunkest, that you can hardly remember what you did the night before, your chances of being a victim are hugely increased, massively increased. It's probably the single worst thing you can do. And the same goes with drugs. If you're going to just take whatever drugs are on offer, whenever they're on offer, the likelihood of you becoming a victim of a violent or sexual crime are massively increased. Why is that? Well, number one, because predators are looking for people that don't have their wits around them. If you know exactly what's going on, then you're probably not going to be easy for the predator to manipulate, and he's going to need to manipulate you away from your situation. He's not going to just run up to you in a club and kind of grab you and drag you out from the middle of a club, because everyone's watching, right? The whole place is looking. They're going to grab that guy and stop him from doing that. So he needs to find a way to remove you from the situation. And even that's down a street, it's very unlikely someone's just going to run up to you in the street and grab you and drag you off the street, because there's probably other people around. He's going to look for ways to do that in a less obvious manner. When you're drunk, you're very susceptible to suggestion. So if someone sort of says, "Oi, come over here," and someone kind of "Oh, I've got a cigarette. Do you want a cigarette?" And you're really drunk. Yeah. And you start walking over towards this guy. He's kind of taking you further and further away from the group, away from the busy street. That's going to be a big problem, because that's exactly what he's looking to do. He's also going to be able to ascertain, by offering drink and drugs. This is a very, very common behaviour for predators. And we see this even with grooming gangs that are grooming young girls. One of the first things they try and do is to offer drink and to offer drugs. They pull up in a car. They don't just grab the young girl off the street and drive off with her, because as soon as she can, she's going to get away. They're going to do this slowly over time. So they're going to say, "Hey, jump in the car, we're going to a party, I've got some vodka, I've got some joints, we might have a bit of cocaine or whatever." And he's going to see if that person is into those things. If that person is into those things, the predator knows, potential victim. This is fantastic for the predator, because now he knows he's got some leverage, i.e. he can utilize those things to kind of get you to do what he wants you to do. And he's also now got a level of shame over that person, because if you've got incredibly drunk and taken a bunch of drugs and gone back to a guy's house, it's going to feel a lot different to complain the next day than if he just grabbed you and dragged you off the street and dragged you away. People are going to complain to the police about that immediately and say, "Hey, I was just grabbed off the street." If you've woken up disorientated, you can't really remember what happened the night before, you kind of think that something bad happened, but you were so drunk it's kind of difficult to recall. That's going to be a very difficult thing to report to the police, because you're going to obviously think, well, they're going to be judging me. I'm going to turn up and say, "Yeah, I got offered some drugs and I said, yeah, great, and I went back to this dude's house to take a bunch of drugs and drink." You're going to automatically feel some level of shame over that, and you're going to imagine that other people are going to be judging you over that. Maybe there's less chance that you're even going to be able to report it. Predators completely understand this, so that would be an ideal situation for them to lure a girl back who's totally off her head, full of drink and drugs. The likelihood of her making a complaint the next day is virtually zero, and they can deny it anyway, and she's not going to be able to say much that's admissible in court, because by her own admission, she was completely out of it and she can't really remember, although she thinks something bad may have happened. I saw so many people getting into those kind of states. And guess which girl is the least likely to get attacked? Hey, it's the named driver girl. You know, we all know that girl in the group of like, she's the serious kind of one that's looking after all her girlfriends. She's going around making sure they're all okay. She's the one giving them drinks of water in between the alcoholic drinks to make sure that they're being a bit more sensible and not getting too drunk. She's the one that's grabbing them back from the guys trying to lead them off and say, come back home with me. And she's the girl that is kind of the cock blocker that the guys say. And the predatory guys hate those girls, you know, because they literally are preventing the predators from getting what they want. Those girls are stepping in, they're confident, they're saying, no, my girlfriend is not coming with you, get your hands off her, you know, go elsewhere, she's coming home with me, we're having a girls' night in and you're not invited. Those girls very rarely become victims of predators. You know, the predators might not like them, but they certainly don't pick on them, because to pick on that girl, you're going to have to make an incredible scene, probably in front of a lot of people. And like I said, predators don't want to do that. They want to do these things in the quiet, in the darkness, away from eyes on them. You know, they don't want to be caught for this kind of stuff. And then how about the way you act? You know, should you act confident, assertive, aggressive? Is it okay to act kind of mousy and like feminine and giggly and a little bit submissive? What's the best way to behave? Well, it really depends on the context of the situation, but in general, I would say confidence is pretty damn good. You know, eye contact, speaking clearly, making sure you say no and mean no. You know, that's a big one that predators will do. They will test the waters before they sort of go in for the kill. You know, a lot of these predatory guys will start stepping over the line slightly and pushing things, and they're looking for the girl that is uncomfortable about saying no. So if they kind of sit next to a girl and immediately put their arm around the girl, you know, there'll be a few different reactions, but let's look at the extremes. One extreme reaction is the girl slaps the guy around the face and says, get your fucking arm off me or I'll snap your fingers. You know, he's not going to be very happy about that, but he knows, hey, this girl is not going to be someone that I'm likely to be able to make into a victim. Then there's the other extreme end where the girl just lets him put his arm around her and she kind of smiles and says, oh, hello. And she doesn't really like that he's doing that, but she doesn't know how to say no. She's not confident enough to say no. And then he puts his hand on her thigh, for example. And again, most girls are going to go, get your hand off me. You know, I don't know you. What do you think you're doing? And any guy with any level of politeness and social etiquette isn't going to do those things. You know, if you want to meet a decent guy, he's not going to just come up and start pouring at you. You know, he's going to have some level of etiquette. He's going to introduce himself, buy you a drink, get to know you. Maybe after a couple of days of getting to know each other, he might start, you know, trying to be a bit physically close to you. But generally speaking, a polite, decent guy isn't going to just come up to you and start pouring you. So if you can't say no to those things, you are straight away a very interesting candidate to that predator. You know, he's going to think, great, I can push things with this girl. She's really struggling to kind of get no across to me. So I've earmarked her. And again, that ties in with the being drunk thing, because if you're very drunk, you're not going to be saying no. You're just going to be letting people pour all over you and do whatever. You're not really going to know what's going on. But equally, you know, you could be completely sober, and if you're just a very kind of timid character and you feel a bit out of your depth, or you even feel pressure from your peer group that you're kind of trying to look cool and let some dude put his arm around you because you want to appear popular, or you've got really low self-esteem, those are things that predators are looking for. You know, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, those are key things that you need to sort out. Now, I mentioned the extreme reaction, like the girl that basically, you know, punches the guy or whatever, is really abusive to him. I've seen a lot of that, and unfortunately that can lead to other issues. You know, that while she won't be a victim of the kind of sexualized predator that I'm mainly talking about, she has increased her chances of becoming a victim of immediate violence. And I've seen a lot of girls that have kind of squared up to these nasty guys in clubs, and they've slapped the guy or whatever, and then the guy's like punched them or glassed them or whatever, you know, something really, really horrific. I've seen loads of that. So just be very careful, because the idea that guys don't punch girls, that only works with decent guys, and decent guys wouldn't be doing that to you in the first place. They wouldn't be coming up to you and sticking their hands all over you, right? So the guy we know isn't decent because he's come up to you like an idiot, and then you're going to slap him around the face, then he's probably going to hurt you. So I would try not to do that. Maybe it would be better to get the guy dragged out by a doorman, you know, and go and say to a doorman, look, this guy's been coming over, he's put his hands on me, I don't want the guy's hands on me, he's a pervert, and keep an eye on him and get rid of him. And most of the time the doorman will do, and then you don't have to punch the guy, because the guy's probably going to kick off the doorman are probably going to kick the shit out of him and throw him out of the club, and he's never going to be in the club again. Ideal. Now, the most controversial one, how about the way people dress? Does that have an effect? Yes, it does. In my experience, it does. But not maybe for the reason that people often believe. You know, we read newspaper articles and stuff. Oh, the girl in the short skirt and the low cut top, she was attacked because the guy, you know, found her sexually irresistible. Look, these predatory types, they want to have sex with all types of different girls. They don't care if she's wearing a short skirt or whatever. That isn't the reason that the dress code seems to have an effect on them. Again, it's due to the guy looking at his potential victims and seeing which ones are likely to be the most successful and the least likely to give him a problem. If you had 10 girls in a row and 9 of them had like sort of businessy suits on, you know, kind of sensible suits, and then one of them had like an ultra short skirt and a tiny little bra top on and tons of makeup, she's the girl in the group that's quite likely to be looking for some male attention. That's the image that that outfit is sending out, especially to males, whether we like it or not. You know, that's the image it's sending out. So this guy is thinking, right, I've got 9 girls that may not be looking for male attention, and I've got 1 who is looking for male attention. So he's going to go up to that girl and then give her some male attention, right? And a lot of the time she is looking for that attention, so she's going to be fairly receptive to that. So she's already singled herself out as the person he's going to talk to. The other girls, you know, the more conservatively they dress, the less this guy is probably going to show interest, you know, and I've definitely seen that play out in tons of clubs. It's the fact that the predator believes that the way you're dressing is that you're going to be an easier victim to manipulate, you know, to make suggestions to. It's not because he's hopelessly turned on by the low cut top, it's because he's making a judgment about you based upon what you're wearing. That judgment might be completely wrong. You might be wearing a low cut top and a short skirt, and you might be super confident, and you might be one of the girls that tells him to sod off and you don't want any male company. But that isn't the message that that outfit sends to that guy. So whether or not you are super confident, he's going to come over to you out of a whole bunch of other girls that he could have come over. If you are a super confident person, then fine, you know, wear what you want. I'm not saying don't wear what you want, but just be aware that it's more likely to attract those kind of guys. Now, there's strength in numbers. One of the most dangerous things would be when a girl got segregated, and this would either be because she got really drunk and kind of lost her group, or annoyed her group and they didn't want anything to do with her and all went off dancing and left her there being drunk and annoying. Now she's really a potential victim because she's drunk. She's probably falling all over the place. She's walking around slurring, and she's on her own, right? So she's going to be very easy to lure off into the corner of the club and then down outside of the club into a taxi and off somewhere. No one's going to know any the better. So that's one of the most dangerous situations. The other one is walking home on your own. So if you've been to a club all night and you've been really safe with your group of friends and you've all stuck together, now you're going to throw all that down the drain to save a couple of quid and say, oh, but I only live 10 minutes down the road, so you girls jump in a cab, I'll be fine to walk, and you make the dreaded walk home. Worst case scenario, you know, worst thing you can do, because at that time of night there's a bunch of sad, single guys walking around looking for a girl, and most girls will know this. If they're walking home at that time of night, they're going to get called up by these guys in the street. You know, the guys, hey, where are you going? Why don't you come back with us? Now, it doesn't take much. If one of those guys is predatory, he's going to take that to the next level, because even normal guys are like calling out and saying, hey, come back with me, sexy, and wolf whistling and all this kind of thing. So pretty bad behaviour in itself, but only needs one predator to see you in that situation, and they're going to make a beeline for you, you know, because now you're on your own, you've got no one to call out to, it's late at night, the streets are quiet. What are you going to do? He can then run up, grab hold of you, drag you off. No one's going to see. He's got exactly what he wants. He's got his darkness, he's got his quiet place, and he's got you alone with no one to oversee what's going on. It's not worth the risk for the sake of a £5 or £10 taxi. Don't do it. Don't do it. And again, people will say, well, I should be able to walk down the street at midnight. Yes, you should. Ideal world. It isn't an ideal world. There's some horrible people out there. The same goes for me. I should be able to walk through Brixton at 1 o'clock in the morning with a see-through bag of money on me. If I did that, the likelihood is I'm going to get beaten up and robbed. Is that my fault? No, it's not my fault. Did I escalate my chances of being beaten and robbed by doing that, going out at that time of night and having a visible bag of money in my hand? Yes, I obviously did. This is all I'm talking about. It's being realistic. And, you know, all the protests that I saw about this, you know, I don't care how many million women want to sit down and have a candlelit protest about this stuff. That isn't going to change the psychopaths and predators. The only thing that's going to do is make guys like myself and loads of other guys think, yeah, we totally agree with you ladies, you know, it's horrific what these predatory guys are doing. We hate them. We will do whatever we can to stop them, but they don't stop because they're nutters, you know, and they don't stop that behaviour until they're in prison and they're unable to actually get hold of a victim. They're not going to stop just because you have all sat around holding a candle up in the air. They're not going to stop just because I've beaten them up a bit when I used to do the door. You know, those guys that I threw out and entered into altercations with, they didn't stop being predators because I beat them. They carried on being predators, they just did it away from me. You know, I saw a lot of guys that beat their wives, beat their girlfriends in front of me. I would go over, I remember, you know, multiple times going over and grabbing hold of these guys and stopping them. They would immediately start to attack me, so I would beat them up basically in self-defense and leave them in a mess. And I would see that girl months later, she's still with the guy. He's still beating her up. The difference is he doesn't beat her up in front of me anymore. You can't change those people, you know, they are what they are. All you can do is take precautions so that you don't become a victim of theirs. Now, they're not the majority of guys, you know, they are a small minority, but they do exist. And there's times of day and certain places that they're going to be the most likely existing in. If you really want to bump into an unpleasant predator, hang around the streets after dark. You know, the later at night, the more likely it is. Hang around in places where they're serving alcohol. Hang around in places where there's a party atmosphere and drugs involved. There's a reason why those guys frequent those kind of places. Hang around late night kebab shops, 24-hour shops, you know, where vulnerable drunk people are walking into. There's a reason why those guys are hanging around those places. If you go to the library at 12 o'clock midday, nothing's going to happen. Predators aren't there because there's not any victims for them there. You know, it's not the place that they're going to find their victim. They already know where they're going to find their victim. So is there anything that you can do or carry that's kind of a last ditch attempt? You know, if someone does grab hold of you and you've become a victim through no fault of your own, but you've been in this set of circumstances that have ended up with you being a victim, what's your kind of last ditch efforts you can do? If you feel that your life is in danger, the law allows you to take whatever action is reasonable at the time, right? And that is a big thing. So it would be very reasonable at the time for a female that was being attacked to do pretty much anything to get that guy off and away from her, because we all know how that story plays out, right? The the girl is either going to get raped, killed, both, or, you know, severely beaten. Whichever one, it's a severe, life-threatening, terrible situation. There isn't a judge in the land or a jury in the land that's going to convict a woman for pretty much any behaviour that she then administers to that guy to get him off her. So that if you have things in your pocket or your handbag that you could pull out and utilise against that person to get them off of you in one of those times, you will get away with it. There's no question about that. You know, a bit different for me. I'm a 16.5 stone man. So if a guy runs up to me and punches me and I kind of grab a knitting needle out of my bag and stab him through the eye with it, I'm going to go to prison because that's not reasonable. If I am a girl and that's happened at 11 o'clock at night and I've been grabbed in the street when I'm walking home alone, I'm going to get away with that because she has no other option. You know, it's a very reasonable thing of her to do because she's in fear of her life and she doesn't know what else to do because she is unable to physically overpower the guy. She doesn't have that option. She has to use what we would call a force multiplier. So a force multiplier could be a comb with a pointy end. And remember, you shouldn't be carrying these things because they are weapons. You know, the law does not allow for you to carry a weapon. The law allows you to use whatever comes to hand when the time dictates that it's necessary. So if you happen to have something that comes to hand that could also work quite well in the manner of a weapon, that's what you are allowed to do. So if you had something like a hairbrush that was pointed, then you could utilize that. If you had a bunch of keys that you were able to grab into your hand and thrust them into a soft and tender area on that attacker, that would be incredibly reasonable. And there's no pleasantness about this. You know, you're going to try and attack the parts that are the most sensitive and the easiest to get to. So that would be things like the eyes, the ears. You know, if you can bite an ear, gouge an eye. If you have long fingernails, a lot of girls have these like really long talon-like fingernails now painted. If you can like ram them in the attacker's eye, that's going to cause him a great deal of pain. You're going to rob him of his ability to see. If you can do that in both of his eyes at once, he's going to struggle to even see what's going on. So you've like robbed him of his sight. I would definitely not suggest like kicking and punching because these are going to be massively ineffective. You know, you could probably kick and punch me for like half a day and I'm still perfectly fine. You know, you haven't subdued me at all just because of the size difference and the technique and the fact that it's going to take a lot to hurt me. You know, even a fully sized guy, if he's punching me in the upper body, you know, I'm probably going to be able to take a few of those before it actually disables me. And for maybe a smaller female, that's going to be like half a day's worth of punches that I could stand there and endure. So forget that. That's not even worth it. You're going to have to go for things that are much, much more vulnerable. Obviously, the genitals are going to be a massively vulnerable area. And this is a fairly unpleasant part of the video, but it needs to be said. If you're in a situation where you cannot get out of it and you are about to become the victim of some kind of sexual assault, this is where becoming submissive for a short period of time can help you. If you can behave scared and submissive, and then you can get into a position where you're able to actually do something horrific to that guy's genitals to get him off you, that's a great position to get yourself into, because believe me, if that happens to that guy, he's going to be in no position to do anything further to you. But the main point being, you're going to use deception. The deception is acting submissively, secretly you're not being submissive, you're laying a plan out, you know, because if you can't overcome that person physically and things are going to go from bad to worse, you have to work out how you can overcome that person. And deception is an excellent one. You know, deception wins most battles, and battles are no different to kind of single combat between two individuals. If you can get your enemy to believe one thing but actually something completely different happens, you've got him on the back foot, right? An army will feign weakness and then they will bring in troops from the other sides that were unknown, you know, and they will suddenly be a much more powerful army and they will overcome the enemy. You know, there's the deception there. You're playing exactly the same trick but on your own. you're acting as if you're submissive, you're no threat to the attacker, you're going to do what he says, and then you're going to attack when he least expects it. It's definitely better to attack quicker rather than waiting, because we know from criminal statistics, the longer a victim waits to fight back, the more likely they are that the end result is not going to be good for them. So if someone tried to bundle you in a car, the time to fight is right there and then before you get bundled in the car. You know, like literally fight to the death before they actually push you into that car, because they're going to be concerned that there's people hearing, there's, you know, CCTV cameras, there's whatever going on in the street. That's going to raise big concerns with them. They're going to have a limited amount of time to try and get you in that car. Then they're going to get panicked and they're going to drive off and probably leave you there. So that's the time to start fighting like your life depends on it. Don't let yourself get bundled into a car, get to a destination somewhere, let them tie you to a chair or whatever it is, and then think, right, I'm going to come up with a plan to, you know, get this guy. That isn't going to work out well. That really frustrates me when I see that. It always plays out in movies that, like, the victim allows it to go that far. You know, if someone comes up to you in the street with a gun at your head and says, get in the car, they're probably going to kill you. So don't get in the car. Why are you doing them favours? You know, don't do them any favours. Make it really awkward for them. If they're going to kill you anyway, let them kill you in the middle of the street in front of everyone so they get arrested and go to prison. Don't then go to some dark old barn somewhere. Let them drive you there in the middle of the outback so that they can tie you to a chair and shoot you, because that only serves to benefit them. You know, don't benefit them. You're not there for their benefit. The last thing I'll talk about is dating. There seems to be like a massive trend now to just go off with random strangers, whether that be at a club or whether that be through online stuff, that it's perfectly acceptable to kind of have a few messages between people online, and then the next thing you know, they're meeting up somewhere and it's just them two at some destination. That to me is incredibly worrying, because that opens you up to potential. Because online, for example, that is a gateway for all the predators. You know, they're all going to be sat there with these dating profiles. That is the best access that they could possibly hope for. So you're going to have your real people looking for real relationships. Of course, they're going to be on there, but they're going to be interspersed with these very unpleasant people that are looking to do possible harm. So if you're meeting people online, my suggestion would be, why don't you offer at first to meet up with groups? You know, if a guy messaged you and says, hey, you look super hot, let's meet up, why not say, sure, I'm out with my girlfriends on Friday, why don't you come down to X bar and let's have a drink together and we'll all have a chat and see how we get on. If that guy has good intentions and really likes you, he will come and he will get on with you and your friends, and he will have a great time with you all. And then afterwards you can say to your friends, what did you think of the guy? They're going to give you some pretty realistic feedback, and then you can make a decision whether you want to see that person again. You know, that's a great way of doing it. I would never turn a girl down that said that. You know, if I really like the look of a girl and she said, oh yeah, I'd love to meet you, but I would feel much better if you came and met me. I've got two of my friends there, or even I'm out with my sister, please come and meet me and have a coffee. I would be like, yeah, 100% I will come. You know, I would meet that girl if I liked her. And if I didn't want to meet her, it means two things. Either I don't like her that much, or I've got really bad intentions and I don't want anyone else around. So it kind of filters out the shit and it filters in potentially really good dates. So don't worry about looking cool. Don't worry about anything else. The main thing in that is safety, and surely you want to be able to filter in good stuff and filter out bad stuff. We all want that, right? And I've heard from so many people online that may not have been predated upon, but they're just sick to death of the amount of bullshit and crappy people that they meet, you know, and like these F-boys and girls that are meeting guys that have just got like one thing in mind and they're just going to sleep with them and go off to someone else, etc., etc. You can filter all those out. You know, that's an easy way to do it, because those guys are not going to turn up and spend 1 or 2 nights with you and your friends or you and your relatives. you know, even to the point of going a little bit more old fashioned. You know, if I really liked to go and she said, sure, why don't you come around my house and, you know, come in, my mum's cooking dinner, I would love for you to come round and see me there. Might seem a bit forward, but I would have zero problem going around there. In fact, I would love to meet someone's mum because I really like home cooking. I like mums. Mums generally like me, so I'd be over the moon about that. But no predator's going to say yes to that. An F-boy's definitely not going to say yes to that. You know, he wants to meet the girl in a club, or he wants to get the girl Netflix and chill classics like, you know, oh, let's not go out, just come round to my place and we'll watch Netflix together and I promise we'll only cuddle. Like, yeah, sure, buddy. But that's also the kind of things predators are doing. They're going to, you know, go on a date with you. They're going to probably offer you drink, drugs, all the rest of it, and they're going to go down exactly the same route as I used to see in the nightclubs. It's just an online version of the same gambit. I hope this has been of some help. I hope that some females watch this. Please leave your comments down below. You know, I know this is a controversial issue. I'm not talking on behalf of females. I'm not a female. I'm simply talking about what I've witnessed and how I believe a lot of it could have been avoided. Thanks for watching. Have a great one. See you all soon.